Very much. Well, out of that could come any second to his point here. Former Bush 43 Deputy Assistant Defense Secretary Peter Brookes. Are the North Koreans getting cold feet, Peter? What do you think?
No, I think this is part of their negotiating posture. You know, in a certain way, it's like, let the negotiating games begin.
Yeah.
They're getting very close. We're within, 30 days of this, and they probably are looking for some concessions to soften up the American side. They feel like they've been a lot of gestures of goodwill, stopping the testing, closing the nuclear site, returning the American hostages. So I think what they're looking for is for us to soften us up, get us ready, and there'll be a lot more behind-the-scenes negotiating going on between the United States and North Korea before the summit takes place. You know,
I read from the dictator himself that he doesn't want to become another Gaddafi. That example came up again.
Sure.
We extracted concessions out of the former Libyan strongman, only he ended up getting killed by his own people. This guy, has a knack for wanting to hang on to power. He sees that and says, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, well, that's a tough, prior to this, Neil, the North Koreans have talked about Libya and Iraq, and for reasons of not giving up their nuclear weapons. So when you talk about Libya or Iraq, Saddam Hussein, Muammar Gaddafi, it makes them a little bit nervous. Because they saw how that ended up when they gave up their nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons are central to North Korea's national security in their view. I mean, they've written it into their constitution that they are a nuclear power. So we're seeing some gaps in the charm offensive we've seen over the last couple of months. Now, that doesn't mean they'll come back around, but there is a certain, there is some value to being unpredictable in international negotiations. They probably didn't want the Americans to feel like you got this all wrapped up. It's all going to be done on June 12th in Singapore, and we're unilaterally going to give up our nuclear weapons. They're saying is that we're going to want some sort of concessions from you as well. You better start thinking about it. It's not going to be just giving up our weapons.
The latest dust-up was armed military exercises with the South Koreans. Of course, we've never changed that, never altered that. I'm told we have talked about maybe changing the scale of those joint exercises, right, but that they fully knew
But also, Neil, they had recently said that Kim had said himself that he understood the need for military exercises. So this is something new. So they're changing the game here. They're changing the things they had spoken about previously. So it's not quite clear. Are they going to come around and say U.S. forces need to leave the peninsula, even though they had hinted in the past that that wouldn't be necessary? Maybe they're going to ask for us to denuclearize to a certain extent, or even completely. They're going to start staking out their negotiating positions, and they may be a lot more extreme than we've seen recently. I'm not saying they're going to be, but it's certainly a possibility. And as you and I have discussed this in the past, we need to be ready for these heavy lifts. There's going to be a lot of challenges.
You talk about being ready for these heavy lifts. To me, they're returning to the old language. They refer to the sinister U.S. won't go ahead and tell us what to do or give up our nukes. Referring to John Bolton, I don't know what the Korean word is for fool, but I think they called him a fool. This is back the language of a few months ago. And in the interim, we've seen nothing of that sort. So it all just seems too weird for words.
Yeah, no, it's understandable. I mean, we want predictability, right? Everybody does. Whether you're talking about the markets or international affairs.
We don't get that out of our own president, right? I mean, and it might be a very wise strategy. Keep them guessing. I understand that.
Yeah, part of their strategy.
Right, but we didn't expect that out of the North Koreans, right?
No, well, yeah, I mean, I feel like they're going back to where they were before, but they may come back to the charm offensive. Once again, there is a value to being unpredictable in negotiations, and the North Koreans are playing that game right now, I think.
All right. Well, I respect your opinion mightily, Peter, so let's hope you're right that this is all just a little bit of subterfuge, but it is confusing. Peter Brookes. Meanwhile, we have a lot going on in the markets. They're not really worried about this. What was odd